karaoke mode.
Hey everyone, welcome to our webinar today. We're doing a live landing page audit. I'm lucky to be joined by Chris Goward of WiderFunnel. He is a Carecom Conversion Summit speaker, which we'll talk about towards the end of the webinar today. And you can catch him on Twitter at Chris Goward. He's also written a great book on conversion rate optimization called You Should Test That, which you can grab at Amazon or any other good book reseller. Myself, I'm Sam Owen. I'm Associate Director of Paid Search at Hanapin Marketing. I also head up our CRO efforts. And I'll also be speaking at the Carecom Conversion Summit in October. You can reach me at Samo and PPC on Twitter. If you'd like to join in and discuss any of the landing pages we're looking at today, or give any CRO tips, or just comment on how my British accent is sliding into an American accent as the webinar goes on, you can reach us on the hashtag ThinkPPC, which is our Hanapin and PPC Hero hashtag. So we're going to open up with a live poll question. And give me a bit of a chance to introduce Chris to you guys. So the first thing we're going to ask is just how long will you guys have been working in PPC, CRO, or online marketing in some capacity? So we have less than a year, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, and 5+ years. Chris, hi, welcome to the webinar. How did you go about and get your start in landing page optimization?
All right, yeah, thanks, Sam. Thanks for the invitation. So that's an interesting question. I started WiderFunnel in 2007, and I was in ad agencies and doing web design since I started in 1994 doing web design. But at the ad agencies, I realized what a terrible job most agencies are doing in websites. And really, at the time, we're trying to recreate TV online. So we wanted to create something where we could really prove the value of what we're bringing to clients. And so it was all focused on testing, and that's all we've been doing since the beginning. And testing since 2007, originally with Offermatica and then Google Website Optimizer, and now we just use all kinds of tools for testing on high traffic websites.
Very cool. I've been working in paid search for just about 5 years now. So I started over in England, moved over to Hanapin a couple of years ago, and then mainly focusing on CRO for the last 1.5 years or so. So obviously, not quite to your level of experience, Chris, but hopefully bringing a lot of things from the PPC realm into the discussion today. And from our results, it looks like we have a pretty even mix of experience across the board. So biggest group is 1 to 3 years, but a lot of people with not so much experience in PPC or CRO, and then a good chunk of you as well with a whole ton of experience there. So we should be able to speak to everyone, hopefully, as we go through these landing pages. And the second one that just gives us a little more of a feel for your experience specifically with landing pages and landing page testing is we just wanted to open up and ask you guys how you manage your landing pages. So the options are I don't currently test any landing pages, or I just use my home page. I design and test them myself. I use third-party software to run landing page tests. I use an agency to manage them, or I'm reconsidering how I manage landing pages. So Chris, again, what kind of tools do you guys use over at WiderFunnel for the majority of your tests?
Yeah, we use a variety of tools, and again, we're focused on testing. We do analytics as well to support testing, but in terms of testing tools, we're really focused on landing pages as well as the whole site-wide experience, all customer touch points. And so some tools are best for landing pages, others are best for testing on websites. For example, Adobe, of course, has their marketing suite, and they have test and target on there. Optimizely, Visual Website Optimizer, and a variety of others that are good for testing on websites. And then for landing pages, there's a lot of great tools for just hosting and testing landing pages. Unbounce is an easy one to get started with, and I noticed some of the people who submitted their pages today are using Unbounce pages. That's cool, and a variety of those.
Very cool. Looks like a good chunk of people are doing their landing page testing themselves. So that's 40% of you, and then kind of a spread across the other question answers there as well. So very cool. We won't stall you any longer. We're going to jump straight in and start talking about landing pages. So we've got a very short introduction just to give you a little bit of context about how we're looking at these landing pages and what specifically is the angle we approach our landing page analysis from. So I'm going to get started. here's a very simple list of some of the different elements of landing pages that we're looking for. So the first is to be attention grabbing. If you land on a boring page and people aren't going to follow through and look at your headlines and see your imagery and eventually be bothered to click on your buttons and fill out your forms and buy your product. Then consistency, which is something I'm going to speak about in a second, specifically with relation to PPC. But it's key that people aren't being confused by your messaging. So when you have a landing page, people get there, they know what they're there for, they know what they want to do, and you know what you want them to do, and it all kind of aligns nicely. Then having a strong call to action, having clear language on your page, making sure that your landing pages are credible, so that it has a lot of social proof, trust, all of that kind of stuff wraps in there. And then finally, kind of having a value proposition that makes sense. So landing page testing is great, but if you're not selling something or giving away a product that people want to be a part of, then it's obviously going to be really hard to have good conversion rates. So that's a little bit more thinking about your business. Like, what can you give away? What can you advertise that's going to bring people in, it's going to drive people to sign up on your forms, it's going to get people to buy your product. And finally, kind of slightly aside, is having impressive visuals. So making sure your landing pages look like they were well designed and imagery lines up again with what you're selling. And the importance of this is just, it kind of wraps back into attention grabbing, consistency, and then also that kind of trust factor and credibility. So if you have a website that looks like it was made in 2000, 2001, people are less inclined to trust that you're a business that's current and up to date. So Chris is going to go through a lot of this stuff too, and we'll kind of talk about it as we go through our landing pages. But the one thing I want to talk about with my background in PPC is what I call campaign alignment. And that's making sure that our keyword to add to landing page line up, because we don't want to have our customers need to think. So as soon as our customers start thinking, they also think about how they can bail from our landing pages and how they shouldn't buy our product. I'm going to give you a quick example that I Googled this morning. So I did a quick search for 65-inch TVs. And I got this ad. This was the top ad. It showed up from Best Buy. 65-inch TVs, free shipping, shop now and save. It's the perfect ad to go with my keyword. It completely aligns with what I'm looking for. And it's exactly what I want. So I clicked this ad to give you guys an example of a great landing page. And unfortunately, I get to a page that doesn't say anything about 65-inch TVs. Like, that's the above the fold, and even the narrow your results in the bottom left down there, if I kind of highlight, that's where I have to go to see the first sign of 65-inch. But it was pretty clear from my keyword and the ad I was shown that I was going to get an experience that was going to shop for 65-inch TVs. Womp womp. So this was not a well-aligned landing page. So it might be a good landing page, and when you look at it out of context of the ad and the campaign, or it could be from an email, it could be from a Twitter campaign, it might not align with what the user is coming in for. So there's something in CRO circles called congruence. It means making sure that your transition from ad to landing page is super smooth, and it's going to provide the user as streamlined an experience as possible. So again, don't make your customers think about what they're doing. Make sure that everything is nice and aligned there from your PPC campaigns. And then I'm going to switch over to Chris, who's going to talk a little more detail about the specifics of doing a landing page audit. Okay. Chris, we're handing over this to you now. So.
Okay. Yep. There we go. Okay, a little clunky transition there, but can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, yeah, so I thought it would help to give a little bit of context as we get into the landing page evaluations. So, because I'll be using, whenever I look at a landing page or a website for conversion optimization, I think in terms of frameworks, and I think that's one of the most important steps that a conversion optimization expert can do, is to understand how to use framework thinking to really organize the thoughts and be comprehensive and find real solutions to important questions. And to build on Sam's question before, and the reason I'm talking to you is this is all we do, right? This is what we've been doing since 2007, is marketing optimization for high traffic companies and across the board. So we're going to talk about e-commerce and lead gen in different industries today, and we've had deep experience testing with high traffic companies in all of those areas. So talking about framework thinking, this is what all the great thinkers do, is they think about how to have elegant solutions and that create the most important questions to answer before actually trying to solve things. And how this applies to conversion optimization is, rather than just going and trying to find tips and tricks to, or so-called best practices to get the best landing pages, actually thinking about, from your customer's perspective, how to solve the real problems that they're facing, the real barriers that they're facing. And by using frameworks, you can be more disciplined and actually get much more powerful results. So I'm going to just briefly talk about a couple frameworks. The first is an overall conversion strategy framework. And I don't have time to get into all this detail, but this is a high-level view of how we found to create the best conversion optimization results is to use a process that's got two phases. One is to think about the conversion optimization strategy. How do you prioritize effort, really understand the customer, and all of the touch points and all of the funnels and paths and flows, user scenarios, and all of these things. And that involves qualitative and quantitative data and really a messy process of understanding the customer's perspective, and then a disciplined process in combination to prioritize the effort. And so that comes up with opportunities. So that's as fast an overview as I can give on the phase one. And I'm going to focus a little bit more on phase two, where once you know where to focus, maybe it's your landing pages, how do you identify what are the important things to test and optimize, and what are the questions you should ask through your testing? So I'm going to show you a framework you can use to do that, but first some context on why. Right? Why do you need to think about these things and ask these questions? The important principle here to understand is that your customers don't think in the same way as you do. When you present information on your pages, the information you present is not what your customer understands. And it's not even what you understand of that information, because it passes through a unique filter. Every one of your prospects and your prospect segments and categories have different filters that are colored by their demographics and psychographics and their understanding of your brand, their experience with you, and experience with their competitors. All of these things filter your information before it becomes perceived. And the only way you can understand how they're filtering that information is to test quantitatively with different approaches to find out what they respond to better. So what I'm going to show you now is that lift model for, some of you may have seen this before, and I'll just give you a brief overview for those that you haven't, because I'm going to use this as in thinking about these landing pages, okay, when we look at the evaluations. It's all about solving the conversion barriers for your prospects and not just chasing after tactics, right? It's funny, we wrote a blog post a couple of years ago with the 31 top conversion optimization tips. And at the top of the blog post, they said, listen, conversion optimization tips are empty. They have limited value because they ignore your context. But everyone's looking for them, so here are some things that you can try testing, right? And even with that disclaimer, it still continues to be one of our most popular blog posts ever, because people are always out there Googling, what are the top landing page tips? But they have limited value. So when thinking about from your customer's perspective, here's a framework that you can use, and then we'll go through today and show you an example of, for how to solve your conversion barriers. There are 6 factors that are influencing your conversion rate right now on your landing pages. The top one and the most important is the value proposition. And every marketer has a different definition of value proposition, but I like to think of it as an equation that goes on in the prospect's mind between the perceived cost of taking action and the perceived benefit. If the perceived benefit outweighs the perceived cost, they're going to have motivation to act. And then all of the other factors will come into play. If the perceived costs are too high, then they'll bounce immediately. It doesn't matter what else you have on the page. Then the other factors support or detract from it, such as the relevance of the presentation, right? How relevant is it to the source media? As Sam was talking about, you've got to have a clear scent trail of relevance throughout your ads, to your landing page, and throughout your conversion funnel. That's very important. Then clarity of the presentation. is clarity of the flow and the imagery and the call to action and the and the actual value proposition copy. Then there's anxiety. What on the page or missing from the page is creating uncertainty in the prospect's mind. It could actually even be, like Sam mentioned, your graphic design perhaps is dated and it's creating anxiety about the type of business and your trust and credibility. And distraction. What are the things on the page that are redirecting attention from the primary message or the primary call to action? And then urgency. Why should they act now? So that's there's actually 27 sub-factors. You can get a lot more information if you Google WiderFunnel lift. There's blog posts and articles and that sort of thing, case studies. But how it works essentially is when you look at your landing page. So this is a landing page from nurse.com where they're selling continuing education memberships, and it's a typical landing page, and some of the ones we're going to look at today have similar characteristics. And by thinking about it through a heuristic analysis from the perspective of the prospects, you can identify a whole bunch of things that could be problems on the page, right? So there's distraction, there's clarity issues all over the page that are causing problems, and that analysis alone from an expert conversion analyst can come up with a whole bunch of ideas to test. And then you take those problems, convert them into strengths by solving them, and then testing within each of those. Each of those points becomes a hypothesis that you can test. So that's what we're going to do today, and look at some of the landing pages from the perspective of the prospect, using frameworks like the lift model and other things that that Sal will be thinking about as well. So I think I can, Sam, maybe we can open up the browser and start looking at some of those pages, if you'd like.
Yep. Okay, I'm just going to grab the screen again here. Let's see what we got. Can you see my my browser now, Chris?
It's there.
Cool. So we got a ton of submissions for these. Apologies if you're on the webinar today and we don't get time to jump onto your landing page. We actually had to pick a small subsection of the total number we got sent. So these are just kind of in the order we were sent them, and we're just going to run through, going to ask Chris his feelings and kind of go through the things that jump out at me. So I'll introduce this first landing page that we have for care.com. And this seems to be a lead generation form to, as the kind of headline on the form there says, find a nanny to look after your children. So some things that kind of immediately jump out at me and what I call my 5-second snapshot are obviously the first thing I look at is actually the image of the little girl. So she's kind of staring at me, and it's the first thing my eyes go to. So rather than going to your message or your call to action, I'm instantly looking at her. Now, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Images of children do tend to generate trust. So from some case studies that I've read, so that's probably a good thing, but maybe the eye direction is wrong. So an image of this girl looking over to be join free today or to find your perfect nanny would redirect the user's focus back over kind of to that left-hand side. There are some nice things on this page. So the form is pretty straightforward. It's just 4 different fields. There's no address and kind of loads of other superfluous information that I'm going to have to start thinking about trusting you guys with. Join free today is a pretty simple call to action. To me, again, it's a little confusing and disjointed. So I don't really know what I'm joining. If it was something more along the lines of like find a nanny in your area, something that went more along the lines of what I was on the page to do, which is to find a nanny, that would make more sense. So join free, I don't really know what I'm joining at this point. That's something that kind of struck me too. I like having the little reassuring logo underneath, so that's something you could test. But especially when it comes to something like childcare, having that trust and truth, as I apparently called it there, is good. So, Chris, what were your first impressions when you looked at this page?
Yeah, I had some similar thoughts. I think one of the biggest issues is that there isn't a unique value proposition above the fold, and Find Your Perfect Nanny is sort of the baseline of the service. But what's unique about Care.com versus versus other competitors where you can find nannies, right? What makes you different? And I think about it, there's a framework we use for that as well, the PODS, POPs, and POIS framework, about thinking about what's the intersection of what the customer wants and what Care.com can provide, and yet what no other competitor can provide. And that's your points of difference, your PODs. And if you focus on those things, then you can actually find out what drives people to act rather than just thinking generically, because Find Your Perfect Nanny adds really little value. And you know, there's a few value proposition points down below the button, but they're given very low prominence, and most of the value is below the fold. You know, it turns out there's almost 11 million members. Well, that's really one of the biggest, to me, might be one of the biggest pieces of value proposition. There's a huge network of nannies to choose from. Well, I didn't know that above the fold, so why would I sign up without knowing what you're offering? And so that's a value proposition point. There's you know, some other things, clarity issues. Below the fold, there's with the green starting, it's right at the fold point, which creates a false bottom. It almost looks like that's the bottom of the page. So that's a clarity issue. Down below where it says how it works, that sign up thing isn't clickable, so that's a clarity issue. Could be some anxiety there. Why can't I click the sign up? I want to sign up now that I see the large network. Yeah, you mentioned the eye-locking image as a distraction. There's no imagery of nannies, right? I mean, that's what I'm there for, is what kind of nannies do you have? Do you know, maybe some sort of image test showing the nannies interacting with the child and with care and concern and, you know, that sort of thing. And then, yeah, location, localization, I think you mentioned, Salmon. I would immediately assume, well, maybe it doesn't work in Canada or in Germany or wherever I am, and, you know, and there's no localization above the fold saying, oh, like, we know you're in Germany, and we've got, you know, X thousand nannies available in your area. That would be a really interesting localization test to try out.
Very cool. Let's jump into our second landing page. So this one comes from the QC Makeup Academy. Let me just see if I can make this full screen for everyone. Chris, what are your initial thoughts looking at this page?
Yeah, you know, let me just pull this up here as well. One of the challenges is it's using a bit of the sort of the popular design style at the moment with very large fonts, which actually and design, which pushes a lot of the content below the fold and makes it actually more difficult to read. That font is so big and thin that your eye has to travel a long distance across the whole screen to read it, and it's also a little bit daunting by including the so many words, right? It's unnecessary to include the brand in there. The logo's right there, so that makes it sort of discourages the reader from getting in there. There's also a lot of visual clarity issues with a lot of different colors and graphics and shapes above the fold on the especially in the header. The very large header and all those social icons are causing distraction, especially that Facebook one popping out there on the right. And then the big Let's Talk, which is creating distraction and competition between the calls to action. Do you want them to request a brochure or to chat now? Or do you want both, or either or? It's a little bit confusing, and that is really grabbing a lot of attention. There's some anxiety on the form with that large block of copy with a checkbox. That kind of creates some worry about, you know, I don't want to read all of that, but that makes me think they just want my email to start spamming me. And then, you know, a lot of the imagery is below the fold. So there's in general, the design of it is causing a lot of the main valuable content to be pushed down and not apparent right away.
Very cool. So the things I noticed, pretty similar to Chris, is just the number of competing calls to action trying to get my attention. So the top of the page, there's this pink free brochure, enroll online. Then as I kind of scroll down from there, Facebook tries to grab my attention, let's talk, and then as I circle back around, I get over to the email me a brochure form. But actually on my screen, the Get the Brochure Now button, which is the main thing that this landing page is trying to achieve, at least with the form being there, is actually hidden below the fold. So of all the things my eyes scan through, the one thing I really want my eyes to hit and scan is pretty much the last thing, or at least I have to do more work to get there. So that was kind of my main observation from this page. Actually, what I did for this one is I quickly Googled online makeup classes to see if I could find an ad, and it showed up here as the top one. So I wanted to talk through kind of that alignment that we looked at, and actually, I thought these guys did a pretty good example of that. So we had online, makeup artist classes as the keyword. We have our headline is online makeup classes. Does your career need a makeover? Learn from celebrity makeup artists with QC. And then I click through and learn how to become a makeup artist online. So it's at least fairly consistent with my ad. The only thing that I saw on there that I'd like to maybe see a little more from is you pitch the celebrity makeup artists in the ad, and then I don't really, like, my eyes don't glance to that straight away anywhere on this page. So I'm sure I might be able to find it in one of these links somewhere. But if that's something that's through your ad testing, getting you a really good click-through rate, then it's probably something you want to mention somewhere on your page too. Cool. We'll jump ahead. So this one comes from Adina, who you're trying to get us to watch their 99-second pitch to use competitive intelligence for search. So instantly, there's a couple of things that jump out at me here. I like the headline, at least. It's pretty much straight to the point, competitive intelligence for search. Maybe I could add a couple more details so I know specifically what it's about. As a PPC person, I'd assume that I'm probably going to get some kind of knowledge of what my competition are doing, like some stats on how much they're spending, what ads they're showing on search. But that's using my own background to assume, so without diving in anymore. If the goal of the page is the 99-second pitch, then kind of having this scrolling header is not really the best thing for you. So you're distracting attention between 3 or 4 different things you want me to do by having the rotating header, but yet it might just be one of them, or it might be that you really need to focus down to show that one key message point, and that could be done through having specific landing pages. So this is just the home page you were submitted. It could be that you guys are actually using landing pages for some of this stuff, but that's where I would look to. And then the request to demo, way down below the fold. If you're going to have a big scrolling header, then I would probably have a consistent call to action that was above the fold that made me at least know when I'm looking as these images scroll what it is you want me to do, what the goal of the page is. Chris, did you have thoughts here?
Yeah, a lot on this one. Unfortunately, it's funny. I'm always a little bit torn when doing landing page analysis because we're so focused on testing that all of these things are really only based on what we've seen by experience, but they should all be tested, right? And unlike a lot of, so-called sort of consultants or experts that are trying to really just sell ideas without never knowing what works, these are all concepts that you should try to test. But in general, I'm looking at the copywriting, and I think from it's very marketing fluffy. Competitive intelligence for search. What in the world does that mean? Like, give me the meat and potatoes. What is it going to give me? What's in it for your customer? I call that the WIFIC. What's in it for your customer? So know what your competitors are doing in their search campaigns. Maybe that's the most important thing. Or find out what works by stealing your competitors' search ideas. I mean, maybe those are things that are more tangible, but those are great, ideas to test anyway. That gets away from using sort of industry jargon that most people don't really care about. And other things, like our unique patent-pending market-driven approach makes Adina the leading solution for capturing blah, 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 blah. Like, come on. Let's just get to the point, say what you mean, and test more tangible content. There's also so that's all clarity, really, is about clarifying the value proposition for the customer. There's also a bit of a technical issue. They've designed their site using RWD, but their breakpoints are a little bit off. And so even on a desktop screen, if you try and, Sam, just reduce the width of the browser just a little bit, you'll see it at one point the navigation disappears, and it's not right. Yeah, so it's not a very small screen size, and now all of the links are gone, right? And it's a little bit too aggressive on the RWD side, so I want to try and adjust that. But again, most of the features are below the fold. There's distraction with that rotating banner that's really not adding a lot of value, and most, again, the values down there. There's some great customers using this. You got Adobe, iProspect, Fairfax. I mean, these things are great down there, but they're hidden. They're hidden too far down, and it's there's a lot of clarity issues.
So we actually had someone on our chat point out a really good observation here. It's from Lisa Bade. These arrows are all pointing to nothing, so that's instantly where your attention is kind of focused up here, but they're not pointing towards the 99-second pitch call to action.
Pointing away from it, yeah.
Cool. The next one we're going to have a look at is from this company called Bertha, and we're going to try and do our best to look at what would be a mobile landing page. So I don't know how well this is really showing up, but this is kind of the view that you would see from your phone, maybe if you have a slightly larger phone like mine. But Chris, what are your thoughts in general on mobile landing pages? Like, what is different from a desktop landing page to a mobile landing page in terms of being great at converting?
Yeah, and that's a good question. We're doing a lot of testing right now in mobile too, and finding out what are the tactics that work on mobile versus desktop. And what's interesting is a lot of the things that we're finding that transfer back and forth too, some insights from mobile testing that actually transfer back to desktop, because you have to be so much more disciplined on mobile. And I think that's the biggest challenge for marketers, is that the screen size, of course, is your biggest limiter. You've got to be so laser focused on what's the one thing you need someone to understand, and not have an overabundance of content. Now, this one, unfortunately, is an example of way too much. No one wants to read that much copy on their phone to really understand what you do, and so it's a long page. Generally, you don't want to have more than 2, maybe 3 lines of copy in a paragraph, and these ones are going over 4, 5, 6 lines of copy, and without breaking it up with bullets or subheads, or what's the main message you want them to get. And again, this is similar to some of the others, is that especially the Care.com, I think of the example, reserve a storage unit. Well, great, but why should I reserve it from you? What's your unique value proposition? Why are you different than everyone else? Because there's 1,000 places out there I can reserve a storage unit from. What makes you different? Do you compare all of the best and find the best prices and options? Do you have the biggest selection? Do you have the best service? Do you have the best guarantees? I mean, what makes you different? And then there's anxiety when you actually get into it, because they don't really understand how the service works. Once you start actually putting in a zip code, you get to the results, and it's a whole bunch of different brands being shown and compared. Well, if I had known that beforehand, maybe that could have been a benefit. But as it is, when I see all these brands, I'm thinking, oh, hang on, this is a bit sketchy. Why are there so many different brands that I haven't heard of? How does this relate to Sparefoot? I mean, are these their places, or is this someone else's storage units? So there's a disjointedness there in the funnel, because I'm not prepared for the whole experience. Whereas on the other hand, it actually could have been a benefit. Oh, and there was one other thing actually I wanted to mention, because I actually pulled it up on my phone, and I can't share my screen right now, but when I pull it up on the phone, half of the screen initially is actually taken up by a cookie warning message on the iPhone, and so that's immediately creating anxiety and blocking your content. But then also they've got one of their calls to action down there, the call us and the size guide are right down at the bottom of the page, stuck on the bottom. And the problem with that is that on an iPhone, if you try and click on that, it's going to move. It's going to disappear, because the iPhone has their menu that pops up down there when you click the bottom of the screen. So it's not taking into consideration the unique OS characteristics.
And I think that's an interesting point, Chris, because one of the things I see with mobile testing is you have to pay a lot more attention to kind of functionality So one thing I like to do is what I call the fat finger test. And I guess if you have fat fingers like me, one thing that can be super irritating with mobile landing pages is just, like for this one, I have to click on the little search button on the side. There's not like a button for me to click that's search now or something. And that's pretty common. Like, you see it a lot with forms as well, where I find it really hard to click into different form fields. And so I spend a lot of my time kind of making sure that the functionality of the page is there first, and then kind of going on to all the things you mentioned. So these guys do mention all of their benefits, but it's pretty much locked in this text, like you said, where there's almost zero chance I'm going to read it. How do you feel about imagery on mobile landing pages? So it's pretty typical on a desktop to have a hero image of some description at the top of the page. On a mobile, that's going to push, because you're not going to have your page maybe in two forms or however it's going to be laid out. It's going to push a lot of your messaging down. So do you think it's something that mobile-wise tends to work better when you leave it out or push it further down the page, or you just open with a big image?
Well, yeah, it's funny, even on desktop, there's sort of these, common ways of doing things, and people think they have to have a hero image, but images are polarizing, and they can either work really well or really hurt your results, and it's all about how much they're adding value to communicating the value proposition. Again, I always go back to that because that's really what it's all about. And if there's an image that's going to help communicate the message, then by all means it's probably a good idea to put it on there. But if it's something that's just taking space and not moving people along in their comprehension, then it's probably, especially on mobile, going to cause problems. And again, that's why mobile is such a great place to test ideas, because you have to be so focused and you learn a lot really fast. And sometimes you can take those learnings and actually try them on your desktop and get some great improvements that way too.
Cool. Let's jump ahead. I guess the next one I have queued up now is this quick paydaynow.net. So, Chris, just your quick 5-second observation on this page.
The initial thing above the fold is really it's more of an anxiety graphic design credibility issue. I think it really needs to be reviewed with some new design approaches. So that's just my impression, but that again, that's a test opportunity. The target audience could respond that way, depending on what the audience is. There's also, of course, a lot of space being taken up by the header. That's with all that just for some reason blank space that is pushing the content below the fold. There is very little value proposition or any message above the fold. A 2-column form generally underperforms, so there's some really sort of UX issues there. It's all about anxiety and distraction. And then some of the design elements on the fields are, there's a lot of color, which creates distraction, reduces clarity and ability to quickly understand what I'm supposed to do. It's actually a simple form. It just looks really complicated because of all the boxes and colors and color blocks and overlapping elements.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things on the form that kind of stood out to me. So there's this little dollar symbol in the box for first name, and that instantly threw me off because I'm thinking, wait, am I putting an amount in here? I don't know if most people would register that, but my brain, for some reason, like that fired off to me. As I scroll down, so I guess there are some good things. There's some trust markers. But again, I think the layout here makes it hard for me to know what to focus on. So I don't really know. I see why get a payday loan, but it's in 3 across, 4 across. My brain hasn't really focused on any of that. It's kind of looking at these circles with the colors around them. And I managed to get to the bottom of the page without really getting a unique value proposition from this business. So I know what they do. I know I can get a cash advance loan. I know how to do it with the form. I don't really trust the form. And then when I scroll down, I don't really read it in too much detail either. So I think there's definitely some opportunities for designs. Form, like Chris said, is probably the first place I would go if I was testing things here. And then also bringing things a little higher, making this header a little smaller as well. Cool, I'll jump ahead. So this one's kind of an interesting one that I wanted to talk to you about, Chris. So we have one from Berry Street, and they're a charity over in Australia who help children look for foster parents and look after kids in bad situations. So the reason I kind of wanted to talk through this one is because I think it's interesting because it's a pretty different value proposition to what we work with most days in either PPC for me or landing page optimization for you. But there's a lot more of an emotional response trying to be generated. Do you have, what's your 5-second snapshot for this page? Or is there anything that really jumps out at you?
Yeah, it's the message should be very simple here. It should be really clear who you help and how I can contribute. And there's just a lot of distraction. That's the overarching challenge with this one. A lot of copy, and trying to over communicate. But then also, how do I act? Eventually, I get to the donate button, which seems like that might be the main thing you want a person to do. But there's a lot of distraction with different links that might also be important, but maybe not the most important. So it's tough to tell, how can I help the most? And I think it could be simplified greatly, and especially, you've got the rotating message. I think what you want to do is test those different things. What happens with marketers is that they have so many great ideas, and they've never really thought about how to find out which one's best. So they just want to put it all out there, and it becomes verbal diarrhea on the page. Where if you were to actually focus on a couple main points, you'd have much better results. And then think about how to simplify this experience. Maybe take the donate form that you have to click to another page. You could simplify this thing, get it down to a few fields, and even get that right on the front page, rather than having to go to a second one. And that form itself really needs to be redesigned. There's a lot of UX barriers happening here. So lots of opportunities for improvement. We've done a lot of testing in NGO and nonprofit work as well, especially around end of year tax time and that sort of thing. And I can see that there's great opportunities for improvement there.
Cool. I think this this site would really benefit from having some dedicated landing pages. So bringing people in from either the ads or campaigns or whatever you're running that's more focused on donation. And like you said, bringing them into a page without the number of distractions. So normally I'll do a distraction analysis, which is essentially me just highlighting everything I can click. It's not the thing I want someone to click. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and another 7 or so up here. As I scroll down, lots of links, lots of big yellow boxes trying to get me to click. And that makes sense for a homepage. But if you want a page that's going to drive people through to donations, you want to remove as much of that as possible. And kind of like Chris said, simplify it, bring it down. You could have the start of a donation form on the right-hand side with a donate button that then takes you through to a checkout just to finish your payment. So it could start with just the amount you want to donate, and then you press donate, and then it will take you through to complete your payment. And you can test lots of different messages and images and that kind of stuff on that landing page until you find the best combination there. But making sure people's eyes flow straight to that donate button and that it's really the focus of that landing page. One other thing, so this is a super tiny detail, but the donation amount seemed really strange to me, and I don't know if this is like an Australian thing or if it's like converting from Australian dollars to US dollars or something for me, but $24, $45, and $87. If there's something linked to those numbers, like if those are the amounts that you've worked out, you need to help like a child a day, a child for a week, then you probably want to mention that messaging there, because I've got there without that happening. If it's just a really random number because people, maybe someone was going to give 20, but it says 24, so they'll give it, okay, that's something that you want to test and make sure you know all the optimum combination of numbers there. But that was just something that stood out to me.
Yeah, price testing itself can be really interesting to find out what maximizes total revenue.
Cool. So we actually have a couple here, I think, that I wanted to show together. So just to kind of talk through with Chris, best practices for advertising a single e-commerce product in the form of a landing page. So the first one, and I'm going to click back between these two. The first one is this How to Be Amazeballs at Meal Prep book, which you can buy online through Zomt, or Z-O-M-T. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be, but the second one is this to talk about here is that this one book has a dedicated product landing page with a click-through. So it's get it now, and when you click it, it takes you to that e-commerce page and the add to cart option. Whereas with this product, you're dropped onto the specific product page where you can kind of click to buy now. So I was wondering, just in general, Chris, like how you approach e-commerce differently to lead gen with landing pages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in general, if you have a focused campaign and lead to a focused landing page, you're going to have more, you can focus your message, probably get better results in most cases. That's what we find. But if there's a lot of selection needed, and that's a value proposition point, then the typical catalog site can work really well too. That's a hypothesis you can test, because then what it does is it allows you to validate whether putting the extra effort into maintaining a whole lot of standalone landing pages is worth it versus having a template-driven catalog experience. That's something we often test with our clients. Sometimes we find the catalog actually works just as well or even better, and it's not worth building out all those single product landing pages. But it also the criteria really is a lot about how much unique messaging needs to be in to sell the product. For this meal prep book, probably makes sense to have a standalone landing page because there's a lot you need to convince someone. You got to take them through a sales process.
I think that's right. I actually thought this was a pretty good landing page, honestly. So what I liked about it, the visuals of the book that I'm going to buy, so that reinforces that I know I'm in the right place. The headlines, pretty to the point, learn how to meal prep like a pro. Okay, the call to action's pretty clear, and it's right there above the fold. So I liked a lot of stuff here. The key benefit, saving me 3 hours a week, like communicate it straight away as I scroll down the page. And I don't really know about whether meal prep being a Google trend is important, but I guess it's communicating some kind of social proof that, hey, more people are interested in this, so you should be too. And then scrolling down and seeing some nice images of food I could prep for myself and seeing everything that's going to be in the book. And it's pretty clearly laid out, so I'm going to have to do a fair amount of reading. But it's a sales pitch for the book anyway. I'm probably not going to buy it just because it's a clean landing page, so I want that information as I scroll through. In terms of things you didn't like with this page, Chris, was there anything that stood out to you?
Yeah, I think the overall design is good, like you say. There's some good messaging down below. The problem to me, the main problem is again in what is the value proposition for this one. I think there's a big missed opportunity here in not highlighting why I should believe Zoe. So Zoe Tattersall seems to be the person who has discovered how to spend only 2 to 3 hours a week doing meal prep versus 6 hours. Well, why should I believe that? What makes Zoe unique? How did Zoe learn this thing, and what is it about her? Because really, she's selling her skills here, and yet there's very little information about why I should believe that. The credibility isn't there. So there's good information about why it's important, why you need to save time in your life and maybe be a pro at prepping meals. I mean, everyone has to eat, but why should I believe you? So that's a big opportunity for testing the main message, and maybe even putting up. I think I would try testing a completely different approach that's more of a personal story, saying, hey, you know what? I was frustrated by having to spend so much time making meals. I really went and I researched all the experts, chefs and people found, I compiled these 65 tips on how to save time and how to create great meals, and this is what I've learned, and now I'm going to share my knowledge with you, right? Something like that that makes it seem personal, because that's really what you're selling. You're selling your own expertise here.
And so one thing that's really interesting, and it's something Brian Massey, who's a regular CRO speaker at a lot of conferences, talked about, and one of the last things I saw him present on is pitching your landing page based on the awareness level of your customers. So how aware are people searching here that meal prep, like saving time on prepping for meals, is a big issue? So if they're coming in from keywords and campaigns that are like meal prep books or meal prep guides, then you're probably going to want to give them a different landing experience to if it's like from more general cooking, maybe from display advertising, they're looking at cooking stuff, they're like, oh yeah, maybe I could save time prepping a meal. And they click, and in which case you're going to want to give them more of a story. So if they're super unaware of the problem and the product, then you want to share more experiences and stories and get them to buy into that concept. And if they are super aware, like, hey, I just want a guide that I'm going to buy to meal prep because I know meal prep time saving is super important to me, then maybe a landing page that's like, here's the book, here's how to get it, here's what's in the book. So I think that's kind of what Chris was mentioning, testing the two different approaches there, but also working out like which campaigns each of those approaches is going to do well with is going to be important. Cool. We've got about 3 or 4 minutes left here. So what I'm going to do, Chris, is let's go through. We had a load of submissions. Let's go through and just do our quick 5-second, like, what's the first thing you notice with the rest of these landing pages? And I'll click back to this this pool supplies one. So what's the first thing here?
Yeah, tons of visual distraction, value proposition, anxiety about the graphic design approach to it. It's dated, and it sort of reduces credibility. All the social icons and all of that stuff in the header is distracting. The main product information is below the fold, so there's clarity issues, and can't really see, and visual eye flow clarity. So the eye flow is totally disjointed. There's things grabbing attention everywhere as you scroll down the page, and it's not one consolidated eye flow message.
Very cool. This next one's Mobile Connect SMS. So I looked at this page without having ever known anything about what the product was, and it took me a long time to figure out what it did. So there's the video there, but I'm not a person who watches landing page videos. So the first thing for me is like, have a headline that tells me what you do. And even when I read a little more, like the subheading, I'm still left a little confused. So maybe like a headline that tells me what you do, and 3 or 4 bullet points that break it down and explain exactly what it is. And the other thing, so the second point here, get a fully functioning 14-day trial. I click that, and that's fine. It's a decent call to action. And I not only land on a different company's website, which is hugely jarring for me, but the highlighted option is the basic package, which I'm going to pay for. But I've just clicked because I want the trial. So if I've clicked for a trial, you probably want to send me straight forward to sign up for the trial. And maybe have something that explains you're going to go to a different website, which is a sister company of ours, or something along those lines. Cool. 5 seconds on this one, Chris?
Yeah, there isn't really any information about the fold other than, call us, contact us. So that's a clarity issue. Distraction on the form, that is a 3-column form will always underperform a single consolidated 1-column form. Submit in the button, nobody wants to submit. Why would you ask them that? What's in it for them? And the copy below is 2 columns. Again, it's competing with each other, and there's some spacing issues. In general design principles, the columns are not quite aligned. There's some little cues that tell me that it's not totally professionally designed, and so I would approach this as a dramatic redesign test. Change the layout to have a consolidated eye flow, a form that's in 1 column, and lead into the main. Have at least just a couple bullet points about why they should contact you, what's different about you than all of the thousands of other lawyers trying to get our attention.
Very cool. So this is another book landing page, Complete Detox, Cleanse, Nourish. So this is another one that it's pretty similarly designed to that last landing page, I guess. But again, so I think we can take a lot of the things we've already said, like it's make sure you start testing for different awareness levels. Think about your key selling points. In general, I kind of like it. So the headline might be a little long to grab my attention. The free ebooks a good proposition. Register your interest versus get the book. I'm not sure in terms of the call to action. That might be something I would test a few times. So I'm registering my interest about what? Like, what if I just want to buy the book? What am I getting with a registered interest? It's a little confusing to me. Cool. I guess we'll make this the last one, Chris, before we jump back. But this is a company called Home Improvement Crew, who it looks like generate leads for you depending and help you find the cheapest contractor in your local area. So what's your snapshot here?
Yeah, wow. It's really a design clarity issue here. It's an unusual design, using a lot of the circles and with gradients and lines and things intersecting behind. And there isn't an overarching value proposition. So there's a lot of different sort of products and categories mentioned, but what do I want to do with them? What are you going to do when I get there? Who are these contractors? What value does Home Improvement Crew provide? Do you certify them? Do you check their quality? Do you provide services to guarantee what they do, or have ratings and reviews? All of these things that it really provides very little information here, other than, again, prematurely trying to get people into the categories.
Very cool. I think on that note, we'll jump back to the final part of our PowerPoint. So we have a couple of special offers just for anyone interested in coming along to the Carecom Conversion Summit in Indianapolis. It is October 14th, is that right? 14th and 15th, downtown Indianapolis at the NCAA Hall of Champions. It should be an awesome event. We have some fantastic speakers lined up, tons of CRO landing page knowledge going to be exchanged there. If you haven't been to Indianapolis, it's a fantastic city. It's where I live. So it's awesome with the Colts and the Pacers if you want to come spend some time in October. But downtown's really nice too. Loads of great steak restaurants and kind of a cool little area there. We also have a solutions blueprint offer from Hanapin Marketing. So if you have a paid search account spending over $20,000 and you'd like a kind of free mini audit to tell you what to work on, you can grab one of those too. They're no obligation at all. We'll just take a look through, give you a few tips. And if you're not interested in any of those things, just click there too. So, but we'd obviously love to see you over at Carecom if you're interested in landing pages. Cool. And once again, thanks an absolute ton for being on our webinar today. If you have any questions or any feedback, use the hashtag ThinkPPC, or you can email us at marketing@hanapinmarketing.com. And just want to say a final thanks to Chris for jumping on today and being a great sport, looking through all those landing pages with me. And thanks to everyone else for signing up and being with us today. Thanks, Chris.